is requesting leave so they can appeal the sentence. It's a little bit messy because the lodgement went in late due to delays on the court side, due to a change in the legal team, and due to certain permissions that had to be granted to the legal team to investigate certain documents. So if you're a betting person, probably bet that it's going to get approved so he can appeal. All right, so thank you all for coming. To start us off, I'm going to invite Emma Davidson, our local Greens member, who's having a little not member moment till the election is next weekend. Emma's been a great supporter of David and for justice and for liberty, and she's always been there to help out and voice our voices for us when she's in her role as a federal politician, a local politician for the ACT. And Emma will also acknowledge country for us. So welcome, Emma Davidson. Please give her a round of applause.
Thank you. I'm going to start by saying Dawaranuna, Dawaranuna, Yangu Nalawiri, Duni Manyan. Nunawawari, Dawarawari, Ningara Dindi, Wangarili Jinyan. Now, if I can get someone to hold this for me so I can say that again in Auslan and in English. What I've just said is that this is Ngunnawal country, and today we are gathering on Ngunnawal country. We always pay respects to elders, female and male, and I thank the Ngunnawal people for allowing me to learn a few words of their language. To continue in Auslan and English, I know that there are many people and families with a connection to the lands of Canberra and the region. And this always was and always will be Aboriginal land where sovereignty was never ceded. This is why truth, treaty and an Indigenous voice to Parliament are important, and that work will continue. So I pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and I also acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are here with us today. It is really important that we're having conversations about who we are as a nation, who we are as a society and what's important to us, that we're bringing everyone in, that everyone needs to be able to participate in the conversation about what's important to us as a society and what our values are and what makes us who we are as a community. Now, what's going on in here today is largely an administrative process, but it's a really important part of the process. Now, it is not in the public interest for this to be dragged out. We want this to run smoothly. We want justice to be able to occur and for him to be able to continue with the process. So that's what's happening today, is the start of all of that. Now, one of the things that we saw in the report that came down from the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide was some talk about the impact of moral injury. And every time we drag out processes like this, where we're actually talking about what's been happening and things take far too long and are far too difficult, it actually increases the level of mental distress for veterans and their families out there in the community. So as the Mental Health Minister, as the Veterans Minister, as the Corrections Minister, it's really important to me to see that justice is done properly, that people are able to go through those processes smoothly and not have them dragged out and take too long, because it is in the public interest for these things to not take all of that time. So I thank you all for coming here today, for continuing to show your support, not just for David, but also for his family. You've got to remember that this is a person who has family and friends who love him and care about him, and are really looking forward to seeing him again. And we want to make sure that that is something that can possibly happen at some point in the future. So in order for that to happen, we need this to happen today. But thank you all for coming and continuing to show your support.
Thank you, Emma. As you know, you all know this. It's got a little interesting short thing to read. Some of you may recognise this. The Public Interest Disclosure Act 2013, commonly known as the PID Act. promotes integrity and accountability in the Commonwealth public sector. The PID Act encourages employees, former employees, and others prescribed in the PID Act excuse my props here. The PID Act provides protections for people who make a disclosure and requires agencies to take appropriate action. And that's it, that's the PID Act. Now, I see a bit of discord there with what's happened to David and what David did. Hence, we're here to protect David and to campaign for the Attorney General to fix the Whistleblower Act, which he hasn't done, which Labor promised to do if they were elected. So it's been a very disappointing episode for whistleblowers with this new government, which has not done what they've said to. So I'll now ask Kathy Vogan to come up. Kathy's a very seasoned reporter, journalist from Consortium News based in Washington and Sydney. So we're going to continue filming. Kathy, I'll hand over to her. She's been a great supporter of our whistleblowers and of course freedom of speech and other things. So if you're not on Consortium News, I suggest you log in and check them out. They have some great journalistic work reporting on items around the world. She's just getting a little ready to go.
Yeah. If you could hold that microphone close. Folks, I usually improvise, but I've been reporting on the case and I need to just deliver you some information, be objective. I've also been reporting on the Assange case in London and reporting on the Assange case for 14 years, basically. In the course of those two cases, I've looked into British, American, Australian, Swedish, and what else? Other law. Other law in relation to press freedom and national security. And so I thought I could offer you an international perspective. And so I actually wrote this down. As I say, I usually improvise, but I don't want to get carried away. So here we go. And I want to talk to you about what just recently happened in Strasbourg for our good friend Julian Assange. That's how we're going to start. In addition to, no, you hold it. In addition to declaring Julian Assange a political prisoner, the Council of Europe has just urged the United States, an observer state in the Council of Europe, to, quote, urgently reform the 1917 Espionage Act to exclude its application to publishers, journalists, and whistleblowers who disclose classified information with the intent to raise public awareness about serious crimes. These are the views of 120 members of parliament in governments all around Europe, from all across the political spectrum. But amendments along the same line as proposed by the Council of Europe have already been drafted and proposed within the United States by Representative Rashida Tlaib of Michigan. They seek to heal the same malaise of punishing the wrong people. Don't shoot the messenger was the popular refrain and has been for 14 years in the case of Assange and also in the case of McBride. One can apply that. It is unlawful, for sure, both in the United States and in Australia. David McBride assures me he has the legal qualification to do that, to classify evidence of crime. But it is also forbidden to reveal unlawfully classified information. How contradictory is that? So the worst kind of misinformation gets to abound. The big lies by omission. As Harold Pinter observed, even while it was happening, it never happened. This is something we are experiencing every day, where state narratives contradict what we see with our own eyes. Yes. And when we self-censor for fear of being disappeared, European parliamentarians have also called for an umbrella of protection for whistleblowers and journalists threatened from abroad by lawfare or worse for raising public awareness of serious crimes that have been ordered unspeakable. This is consistent with Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights, the freedom of expression right. And wouldn't we like a few of those here in Australia? We need a Bill of Rights, of course we do. We're a balancing act. In Europe, Article 10, in the European Court of Human Rights, a balancing act must be done between the alleged violation of national security and the public's need to know this information. As the late and great John Pilger once said, when secrecy is combined with impunity, bad things happen. We know that from the revelations of WikiLeaks, but we remain very contradictory in Australia. The Commonwealth Direction of Public Prosecutions advises that it is not in the public interest to prosecute a journalist for revealing serious crime, but the whistleblower who enables that work has no right to a public interest defence. The Afghanistan Inquiry, better known as the Brereton Report, the Afghanistan Inquiry Implementation Oversight Panel report, held for release by our Attorney General until the very day of David McBride's sentencing, had nothing to say about the treatment of whistleblowers. It rather looked at ways of eliminating lofty ambitions, one might say, eliminating the possibility of serious crime altogether by our military. Its chapter on ethics suggested that a prior decision-making process of triangulation be replaced by a theory of natural law, where war crime is always the wrong outcome. The panel highlighted negligence at the level of senior command in failing to recognise, quote, multiple signs that atrocities were being committed and failing to act in a way that would have ended this behaviour much sooner. But do we have a remedy yet for protecting those who simply set the record straight? I don't think so. That is a conversation we need to have. Chelsea Manning suggested that misinformation could be our greatest problem for the next 2 decades. I think we sunk into that darkness decades ago. But a light has shone in Europe, a light that beams out the message, let us not call it a serious crime to tell the truth. Read the room, Australia. Thank you.
Right, folks, we're sort of running out of time here. If you feel like going in to grab a seat, please do so. I'm going to call Graham up to say a few brief words. Graham's a long-distance activist in the peace, truth and anti-war movements around the world. Again, nice bright faces when you do go in. If you go in to see David, keep it positive and give him a thumbs up. All right, over to Graham.
Mike, I'd rather not use the mic. I'd rather be part of the people, speaking to the people. I want to reinforce what Kathy has said. It is appalling what has happened to our community. Given all the resources, given all those guns and weapons, what have they allowed us to do? We are an invaded country. When Obama came to the Parliament, he departed and went north to Darwin with Julia Gillard following. They signed a status of forces agreement and immediately made it secret. The status of forces agreement is what power the hosting country has over the visiting military. Why do they want to keep this secret? We'd be eager to know that if a woman was raped by a Marine in Darwin, you want to know what law they face. They didn't want us to know because the fact was there was no liability. What the Americans do when they come in, the American military, they whip them out of the country as fast as possible. There is no justice to be expected for the victims of the crimes of military personnel in Australia. Understand, this is what this Labor government has delivered to us, an occupied country. How base can a military be where it actually invites in an army to occupy? That's what we have been delivered. So these generals who want to punish David McBride, who want to keep their medals despite their war crimes, they are base. Base. Absolutely depraved military personnel. So where will justice come from? Just us, folks. When it comes to a crisis, it's just citizens like us assembling in public place, uniting and getting our message across that does it. I'm a bit like Craig. I wish I didn't have to do this. We've had a long campaign with children and arms, but we must do it again. And what's the benefit of doing this? Friendship.
We win.
We win friends. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Right, folks, if we can just pack the signs together, we'll pick them up when we come out. Thank you all for coming. Please go in if you can and support David. Give him a big smile and a thumbs up. Thank you for coming, everyone.
Sorry, Ian.